Today we're exploring one of the East Bay's most historic and beautiful natural treasures, Codornices Creek. It's a small 2-mile waterway that tells a very interesting environmental story of Berkeley and Albany in one meandering line. I'm going to talk about its past, present, and the implications of living in properties adjacent to creeks. I end with a video tour of the creek as it makes its way to the bay to highlight its beauty, which for me sparked a trip down memory lane as it touches so many wonderful parks that I enjoyed as a child and that my kids enjoy today. Codornices Creek begins high in the Berkeley Hills and flows west through neighborhoods, parks, backyards, and city borders and eventually reaches the San Francisco Bay. It's a perennial stream, meaning that it flows year-round, but it isn't just a pretty waterway. It's an important fish run. Codornices Creek is one of the most open and unobstructed tributaries feeding into the bay, and it provides essential habitat for native steelhead trout. If you're into biodiversity, this creek is an absolute gem. The wider watershed that it sits in covers about 700 acres, extending from the hills all the way to the flats. About 4% of it, or 30 acres, is within the city of Albany. So everything that happens here is a joint effort. Because Codornices Creek crosses 3 jurisdictions, Albany, Berkeley, and UC Berkeley, these agencies signed a Memorandum of Understanding back in 2004 that governs ongoing maintenance. The name of the creek comes from the Spanish word codornices, meaning quails, because California Valley quail once filled the area. And I imagine it became Codornices because people had trouble saying the Spanish word. Before European settlers arrived, the creek didn't flow directly into the bay. Instead, it dispersed into a huge marsh, mixing with other small creeks. Only later, in the 19th century, was a channel cut to give the creek a straight shot into the bay near the Golden Gate Fields racetracks. So, even from the start, Codornices Creek has always been shaped by the relationship between nature and human development. Its early history begins in the 1800s with the Peralta family, owners of the enormous Rancho San Antonio land grant. Domingo Peralta, one of Luis Maria Peralta's sons, built his home right on the banks of Codornices Creek, near the area we now know as St. Mary's College High School in Berkeley. This early settlement set the stage for the creek becoming a focal point of early Berkeley life. Meanwhile, also in the 1800s, a quarry operated near the creek's headwaters in the La Loma district. Eventually, in the 1960s, that quarry was transformed into a city park. One of the creek's most fascinating early residents was Napoleon Bonaparte Byrne. Yes, Napoleon Bonaparte Byrne, a wealthy Missourian who tried to farm along Codornices Creek in the mid-1800s. Around 1860, Byrne acquired a large amount of land, eventually totaling over 800 acres, which stretched from what is now Live Oak Park to the hills above. After farming failed, he began selling off his extensive property to developers like Henry Berryman, who then subdivided the land for residential development, shaping much of North Berkeley. Henry Berryman bought the land adjacent to the creek near Euclid Avenue and built the Berryman Reservoir in 1877. That reservoir supplied water for decades, but was eventually drained due to earthquake concerns. In 2013, it was replaced by a modern water tank on the same site. From 1912 to 1928, a massive 275-foot wooden trestle carried streetcars and cars across Codornices Creek along Euclid Avenue. By 1928, the trestle was filled in and replaced by a culvert, one of many moments when the creek was buried in pipes to make way for development. So even early on, the creek was tied to water infrastructure, agriculture, and the early shaping of Berkeley's neighborhoods. But at the same time, people were recognizing the beauty of the creek. In 1914, Berkeley created Live Oak Park, its first nature park. In 1915, Codornices Park opened just across Euclid Avenue. In the 1930s, the Berkeley Rose Garden was built, overlooking the creek. This was a golden era of parks and community centers. The creek's natural beauty was a central part of Berkeley's growing identity. Further downstream, the story wasn't as charming. The city's owned land near the creek for noxious industries. The 1920s saw a garbage incinerator built there, later turned into a slaughterhouse. Add in gas plants, scrap metal yards, and you can see how the lower creek became heavily polluted. By the mid-20th century, parts of the creek were buried under rail lines, parks, streets, and freeways. Codornices Creek managed to survive mostly intact only because it formed the boundary between Berkeley and Albany, making large-scale construction complicated. After World War II, many of the polluting industries shut down. The University of California purchased nearby housing and straightened portions of the creek during the 1960s. Restoration efforts made steady progress beginning in the 1970s when volunteers began planting native plants at Codornices Park. Over time, the creek was left alone long enough for nature to quietly rebuild itself. Cleaner water, more trees, and more shade. And then something remarkable happened. Around the 1980s, steelhead trout made an unexpected comeback, swimming up the creek and reproducing. This discovery was actually made in the late 1990s by the organization Friends of Five Creeks. This was a sign that the creek's ecosystem was rebounding, despite decades of pollution and urban development. In 1995, a section between 8th and 9th Street was daylighted, which means brought back above ground. In the late 1990s, UC Berkeley collaborated with the city of Albany to restore the creek's natural meanders and improve habitat at University Village. In 2007, more work was done near St. Mary's College High School. By 2010, restored sections extended significantly downstream, and the work continues today, particularly below San Pablo Avenue. Culverts still block parts of the creek, pollution remains a risk, homeless encampments, stormwater runoff, and aging infrastructure all create ongoing challenges for preservation, but the good work persists. Now for the be aware part. I didn't want to call it beware because I didn't want to scare people into the horrors of living adjacent to creeks. Plenty of people do it and have no problems, but I did want to talk about there are things one should be aware of if they're going to buy near a creek. And there are two risks that stand above everything else. And if you're looking at a creekside property, especially here in the Bay Area, this is the thing that can cost homeowners tens of thousands of dollars if they don't understand it before they buy. All right, here it is. The biggest risks of buying a home near an open creek are flooding and erosion. Period. And these two issues go hand in hand. A creek is a living, moving system. It doesn't stay the same from year to year. When big storms hit, like the atmospheric rivers we get in Northern California, those water levels rise fast. The flooding can mean water inside the home, damage to flooring, drywall, and electrical, foundation issues, and repairs that insurance often does not cover. But sometimes the danger isn't the water you see. It's the water that slowly compromises the land underneath the property, creating erosion. It's slow, it's steady, and it's easy to ignore until it becomes a crisis. Over time, the water carves into the creek banks. You can lose soil, you can lose fencing, you can lose a deck. And here's the big surprise for a lot of buyers. Standard homeowners insurance doesn't cover erosion. It also doesn't cover land movement or slope failure. So if the land under your home starts shifting, that bill is yours. Also, standard homeowners insurance does not cover flooding from a creek. To be covered, you need a FEMA flood policy, and even that has limitations. But here's where it gets tricky. A home can be outside a designated flood zone today, and then a few years later, after one big storm or new upstream development, FEMA updates the maps and suddenly you're required to carry flood insurance. Cost goes up, risk goes up, and homeowners often feel blindsided. And here's something else to think about. Many cities and counties have strict regulations about what you can do near a creek: planting, trimming, drainage, fences, and retaining walls. In some cases, you're responsible for maintaining the creek along your property line. Berkeley's creek ordinance limits what you can build near an open creek. If your property is within 30 feet of an open creek's center line, you may face restrictions on adding square footage, a garage, building an ADU, expanding your footprint, moving walls towards the creek, etc. And in Berkeley, where expandability massively drives long-term value, losing these options can be a big deal. It's a big part of what I talk about in creative real estate ownership. The ability to expand your home or add on to it is a big deal. So what should you do if you love a house that's right next to a creek? Here's your due diligence checklist. Number 1, check FEMA flood maps. Know the current rating. Number 2, review the seller's disclosures for flood history and erosion signs. Number 3, look at the creek banks. Is the soil disappearing or the trees leaning? Number 4, order a geotechnical evaluation if the home is close to the edge. Number 5, check city or county creek regulations. They vary a lot. And finally, number 6, talk to insurance providers early to understand what the actual coverage is. And if the home has good setbacks, a stable bank, and no history of flooding, a creek can be an amazing amenity. It provides scenic natural views, calming sounds, mature trees and open space, wildlife sightings, privacy from neighbors, and direct access to paths or trails. So now let's take a tour of this gorgeous creek. But first, thanks for joining me on Creative Real Estate Ownership. My name is Josh Silverman. Please email me here, like and subscribe here, and thank you for joining me. And let's take a look. Codornices Park. This is where we're going to start our journey, making our way down the hill here. This is just such a beautiful park. You can see along the creek line here, there's all these redwood trees and various types of trees, and they're all drinking the water that the creek supplies. And there's picnic tables here, and a softball field, and a basketball court, and this famous stone slide here that anybody who has kids or has been a kid at this park absolutely loves. And it's just a really beautiful park, and kind of magical as a kid to kind of run through this space. And I've always loved it and continue to love it to this day. And so I'm going to be quiet at times just to kind of take in this moment of Zen and slow down and look at nature. And but I'll jump back in. Where the creek at Codornices Park goes underground, jumps into a culvert here, and crosses the street to the Berkeley Rose Garden. This beautiful amphitheater style rose garden is a much beloved park in Berkeley, and when the flowers are in bloom, it's just stunning. And the creek opens back up here for a short period of time in the park. You see it coming down here, this little waterfall, and then out it goes underneath this fence and into the neighborhood.
Hello.
We drop down to Live Oak Park here, which is very similar terrain and also very magical, and these wooden bridges. And my kids were actually just at a birthday party here last weekend, and just were so happy running around here, and it's just endless source of entertainment. Also, there's a community center and basketball courts, a playground, and this big grass field here, and so Live Oak is an absolute gem. Here you see how the creek crosses streets, so it'll go underneath, and you'll find a lot of these little bridges like this in town, and so it goes under, and you'll see another bridge on the other side there, a little wall, a little rock wall, and you can see all that vegetation, all those trees, and it's just really beautiful inside there. You can see how close this house is to it, but pretty special. Here we drop down to Albany Greenway, and where the BART train runs, and this is right at the Berkeley Albany border, like I mentioned before. And so here the creek is, and I remember when this house to the left there was for sale, that took a little while because of being so close to the creek, I imagine. And this park I love. Take bikes out here. I remember playing baseball with my dad on that field off to the right there, that grass field, and it's also a really lovely space, even with the BART trains going by. There you see it goes back underground, and crosses down into the Albany Little League baseball fields. So this is where the little dudes play, sometimes T-ball. And The creek running along the left side here is really nice. The big rains haven't started, so it's a kind of a slow-moving creek at this point. Here's the famous Albany Little League baseball field, this Field of Dreams here. I used to play here. My kid plays here. Just a wonderful park. So now we're well into the flatlands and very much on that Berkeley-Albany border. Here we drop down further, making our way to the bay, and there's these big soccer fields. So shout out Albany Berkeley Soccer Club, ABSC, that my kids play in. You cross this really cute bridge, and you can see the creek running there. It's moving even slower. The ground is flatter. But it is moving along. It's making its way. More huge soccer fields where I spend Saturdays and Sundays sometime, and that's University Village over there. That's UC Berkeley housing. So now we're on the tail end before it drops into basically its final culvert and makes its way down to this marsh area and into the bay. This is where it empties in Albany, and it completes its journey down into the bay. I hope you enjoyed watching this. Thank you.